It's Albert Schizo Review.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. All right. Well, so this is the second time that I'm trying to record this, and you believe that I'm such a fucking idiot that I did this whole fucking thing and I forgot to press record. So this is the second attempt at my Schizo review for the new movie Supergirl. You'll see why I call it a Schizo review in a second. It's pretty much just a bunch of notes that I took while I was watching the movie, and I'm trying to make sense of. So anyway, right at the beginning, I'm just going to give a couple of caveats before I start. Now, I know right off the bat that I'm not the demographic for this movie, right? It's probably made for, a younger audience of female viewers, whereas I'm a middle-aged man. So I doubt it's meant for me. So I'll keep that in mind. You keep that in mind. I also want to mention that normally I wouldn't be too kicky about comparing like the comic book or the source material to the actual movie. I know things change, especially like in Marvel, DC movies, stuff like that. But what I will say is that this movie had a trailer at the very beginning of when they were doing this. That at the end of the trailer, there was like a literal screenshot that just stated like, read the comic that this movie is based off of, Supergirl, World of Tomorrow, or Woman of Tomorrow, whatever. And plus, the name of the movie was Supergirl, the Woman of Tomorrow before they changed it. So like they're obviously like, I'm not saying they're adapting it to screen, but it's obviously very heavily influenced by the comic. So I will mention a couple things. Again, I'm not trying to be too nitpicky, even though you'll see that I will be. So I'm not going to try to do too many differences between the comic. But anyway, just so we get that clear. Oh yeah, also I just want to say spoilers. By the way, I'm not even going to attempt to like edit myself to what I can and can't say. So just assume from here on out spoilers. All right. So one of the big things that people have been saying or people have been complaining about are the muted colors, right? If you've seen the comic or if you've read the comic, you know that it's a great comic, right? And it's got great artwork. I don't know if I would say psychedelic, but definitely very visual, lots of colors and everything. The movie is very muted, a lot of browns, a lot of grays, a lot of muted colors. To me personally, it doesn't really affect the end product. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, obviously, it would have been better, like, well, I'll say this, at first, it didn't bother me, too much. Then I read a comment that someone else made that they said, they made the same, complaint, and they said that, for example, Project Hail Mary is another, movie that's like, a serious, funny kind of, and they had beautiful visuals, that could have, translated into this movie as well. So that might recontextualize that point. But to be honest with you, for me, at the first time I watched the movie, or since I've seen the movie, it wasn't that big of a deal. I'll be honest. All right. Now another thing that other people have been complaining about is like the what is it, Crumb the Destroyer, whatever his name is. Um, I guess in the comic, or not, I guess, I mean, I did read the comic, but in the comic, he's like an Irish kind of looking guy. But I guess in the movie, they made him kind of like a generic space looking monster dude. Actually, a lot of people say he looks like a Ravager from Guardians of the Galaxies, which I agree totally looks like the Ravager. But it's just kind of like a generic, uh, villain of the week. It reminded me a lot of the villain. I don't even remember her name from the Marvels, where it's just like it's the bad guy in black and, whatever. Uh, and I know the girl's black. I meant like they're dressed in black. I didn't mean it that way. Anyway, but I mean, could they have done better? Yeah, they went really generic. I agree. They could have been better. It didn't affect me too much again. I mean, I'm not smart enough. I know there are other people saying that, he was an Irish looking man for X or Y reason in the comic. Uh, I guess I didn't pick up on that. I guess it could be true, but I guess the people at Warner Brothers didn't really feel that way either. Whatever. It didn't really bother me that much. All right, moving on. Um, so one of the things that took me out of the movie a lot was like, I feel like it was a lot of oddly specific Earth things that kept popping up. And even then, like even more specific, we're talking about like things like American things, right? So that just took me out of the movie. So like if you're in the middle of space, right, like galaxies or I don't know where, farther away with aliens and stuff around. I mean, all of a sudden there's like a disco ball. I don't know if you guys know, but like disco balls were invented in like Kentucky in like the 1900s or something. I don't know the date, but it's like oddly American. And then not that there's anything wrong with it, but I mean like in a space opera. And then like at some point they went to like a dirty cantina and there was a lady singing, right? And she was singing uh, I'm in Heaven. And I'm like, again, it's like a very odd song for like aliens who have what I'm assuming is no idea of Earth at the very least. And, singing a very specific American song. As a matter of fact, the fact that I mean, someone could nitpick and say that them speaking English, is annoying because they're aliens. But it's a movie for kids. You got to understand what they're saying. They did do some alien language, right? Like there was like a black couple who kind of spoke broken English. So whatever. It wasn't too big of a deal for me. But the things that would come up, every once in a while, where you're just like, just take me out of the movie. Anyway, all right. So moving on. Well, at the beginning of the movie, she comes out. And they made a big emphasis on her being a drunk. I'm like, I get it. She's drunk. I feel like that might have stretched out a little bit too much. Even in the movie that movie was based off of, which is like a True Grit, right? Where Rooster Cogburn was a drunk. I feel like they were like, okay, he's a drunk, but then like the next day he's sober or whatever. I don't know. I just felt like, okay, I get it. She's drunk. Just like show her be drunk at the beginning, and then I get it. Whatever. All right. So this next thing might not be important to anybody else but me. But to be honest, I'm not a big fan of this guy. I don't know why he's in everything. I don't know why everybody sucks his dick so hard. But Seth Rogen is in this movie. He does little cameos, like a little, Star Wars character guy on the bus. Does he have to be in everything? I don't understand. I'm not a big fan of him. I just I hear his voice, and again, it just rubs me the wrong way. Takes me out of the movie. Whatever. Okay. Again, we're talking about a movie not for me. Let's see. There's a part where I guess they're on the bus and they get stopped by some, I think they call them like tech pirates or something, which they're all female. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I don't know, but just mentioning it. Um I thought it was funny because they decided to go for tech pirates or whatever when the bad guys are also kind of like pirates. And I'm like, in the book or in the comic book, I think of the part with the bus. It was like a magic space. I don't know, it was a dragon or something like that. And I'm just like, well, in a book about or in a movie about superpowers and space and aliens and stuff, pussied out with space dragon. But I guess whatever, whatever. And in that scene, there's also something that took me out where she was in space, right? And like they had pushed her into space and she was dying until the sun came out. And then she took a breath, and I know she took a breath because I rewinded, it took me out and I rewinded it in the theater I was in, right? I rewinded it and I did hear there's definitely an audible breath sound. And I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't make any sense. And again, I know I'm nitpicking a kids movie, but they're in space, right? The space is void of anything. That's the point. It's a vacuum, right? So I guess you could argue that it was gas escaping, I guess, for her chest or something. But first off, that's not what it sounded like. And second off, what that would have killed. I don't know. But I just feel I guess in the comics and which I'm not that big of a Superman fan. I'm more of a Batman fan. But in the cartoons and the comics, it seems like they hold their breath when they go to outer space, and that's when they can, because sometimes they can't go to outer space without spacesuits. So each one makes. But still, I was like, okay, well, whatever, I guess. Moving on. All right, so this is gonna be a little bit controversial, and that's fine, I know. Um, so I don't remember that the comic book was so, and I don't want to use the only words I can think of are like internet slang words like girl boss and all these other things. So I don't want to necessarily use those, but I don't say misandrous, but it's just and again, I know Supergirl, I understand it's not a movie for me, but I still when you can feel when something is shoehorned in there to be I don't want to say pushing an agenda. Again, I'm not trying to whistleblow or anything like that. I'm just, saying how I feel when I watched it. And it just takes me out of the movie. And I'll just give you a couple examples. Maybe you'll understand what I'm saying. Okay, so for example, one of the big things is all right, so the Crumb the Dilator, whatever the fuck his name is. I guess when the black couple backstab Supergirl, right? It turns out that he steals women or girls for a harem or to sell them. I'm not sure exactly what. And it's okay, I guess, whatever, I guess. But then, they save them or they've, figure that part out. And then you're like, okay, fine, whatever. But then at the end of the movie with the big battle, they bring it up again where it's oh, by the way, on this planet, he also has a harem of stolen girls. It's okay, bro, I get it. I get it. He steals girls. He's a man. He's bad. I get it, bro. And then the point of me even saying that is because in the comic, that's not even it, or that's better yet, that's not even in the comic. So it's that's something that someone, again, agenda, whatever you want to say, thought of and said, oh, let's put this in the movie for X or Y reason. And I'm just like, okay, well, I just kind of feel like it was still a shoehorn in there, I guess. And again, other examples, there's a line where Supergirl said, you fragile excuse of a man. I was like, okay, it kind of took me out, I guess, whatever. There was also a line where I think Ruthie told her, he's like, oh, how come he's Superman and you're Supergirl? And I'm just like, all right, man, who cares? I mean, like I said, I'm not in the demographic, but it didn't move the plot forward. Why even say that? I don't know, whatever. Um, the part two where Lobo or whatever, when he's introduced, Supergirl literally says something like, "No, he's a god" or something like that. But then, like almost immediately after, he has to be saved by Supergirl, and then even further on, he gets saved by Ruthie. So it's like, okay, so is he a god? Or these girls are apparently are stronger than, or he's in need of girl power for whatever. Okay, whatever. Speaking of Lobo, there was a line also that he said later in the movie where he says something like, "See ya, tits," and I was like, I mean, I understand he's like Deadpool. That is something that he might say. I could actually see his character saying something like "See ya, tits," but it still feels like kind of shoehorned in there. They didn't say anything earlier about him being misogynistic or anything like that. So it just kind of like came out of left field. And, okay, I guess see you later, tits. I guess whatever, dude. And then there was also other things that weren't necessarily like gender related, but that just kinda took me out of the movie because they were so ridiculous. Like, there's a line that I think, Supergirl said something where it's like, "Oh, it's not his age that makes him young, it's his heart." And it was okay, that to me is just like, I'm 14 and this is deep, like, that's just like, okay, bro. Just imagine like a pedophile saying something like that, like, "Oh, I know she's, 14, but, her heart is 24." Like, it's like, "Okay, bro, that doesn't work that way," but okay, whatever. Alright, moving on. Alright, so I guess in the comics, I don't know a lot of people, like I said, I'm not too into it or whatever, Superman. But from what I remember, I think Kara was like a girl, she when the Krypton thing happened and she was sent out, right? But in this movie, they changed that to something to me is like, what? So I guess like they explained that Krypton had exploded and then like 8 years passed before her mom got pregnant. And it's like, what the fuck? Who would make a decision like that? Like, I don't know, the whole rock floating in space. How much space do they have to like grow crops and stuff? Who would bring another life into that situation? You know what I mean? Like, wouldn't you wait until you find another planet or something else? Because they didn't even know about the radiation. I'll give them that. But like, still, it's like imagine being like a Jewish person in the Holocaust, at the height of the Holocaust, hiding in an attic, and turning to your spouse and being like, you know what? I think right now would be a great time to have a kid. I'm like, what the fuck? Why did they change it? What's going on? What the fuck? All right, moving on to my next note. Okay, I feel like the pacing was off. Okay, I'm not smart enough to like tell you why exactly it is. Because if I were to say something like, "Oh, it's fast in some parts, it's slow in some parts," well, obviously a movie is like that. They have to have steeps and valleys and all that stuff. But it's just like all I can tell you is that my monkey brain felt like the pacing was off. So there could be other people who could describe it to you, but it's just like I felt that. So I was like, the pacing is a little off. Okay, that's all I have. Now this is one of the biggest gripes that I have with this movie. And I think, once you listen to it, you'll agree or whatever. It doesn't matter. So this is like the biggest gripe I have. There's two gripes that go into one gripe, but it all makes sense. So Ruthie is supposed to be the stand-in for the audience member, right? Like in the comic, she's, the son of I think she's a rock farmer, which what the fuck is that, but whatever. And she's never been to space and all stuff. So like when the dad dies and she finally goes to space, it's like, she's in awe, aliens, technology, super, all this stuff going on. I don't even know what's going on. She's whatever. In this movie, it seemed like she was from the get-go kind of like I don't say fierce, that's not the right word, but like she definitely wasn't all they never made any kind of mention of her never being to space or being in awe of the aliens. And as a matter of fact, she helped, Supergirl with like translating things and doing stuff and stuff like that. So you never got really like the feeling of a farm girl, like I said, in space. And this is important later because, all right. So the biggest complaint that I have, the reason that I said that is because they completely skipped over one of, if not the most important scene in the comic, which is when Supergirl is in the green sun planet or whatever, and she's dying. And like I said, from that point prior, Ruthie had been enough, like she had been under the umbrella of Supergirl. Supergirl had saved her, fed her, all the stuff, right? But now here the roles are reversed, and at this moment, Ruthie, has to search within her to save or to defend Supergirl. She even kills, some dinosaurs and does all this and that. To where 3 days later, once the sun goes down or the other sun comes up, she's a different person. She's self-realized. You know what I mean? She's now like no longer a little girl. She's the woman. Whatever, something like that. Okay, so this movie completely did not cover that. They cut that out. So they go to the Green Planet. Supergirl's there, Ruthie is there. They didn't really explain. I mean, they did the hand wave explanation that she snuck in the fucking cargo ship, which is fucking stupid. But then even then, they just bonked her on the fucking head and took her away. So why even? I don't even understand why they even included the fucking green sun planet. And then all that to say is like, in the next scene, she's in a prison cell, and out of nowhere, she beats up or she decides to take on one of the Ravager pirates or whatever they're called. And it's like, okay, well, it didn't feel earned, bro. There was no point where she, there's no character development to where she deserves, or not deserves, but where she earned being able to fight or being no longer scared or whatever it is, right? So just like, so the best way I could kind of compare is like, just imagine like Batman, a Batman movie. Let's say, they didn't include any of the scenes where like he's training, with the fucking ninjas, and they don't include any scenes where like he's studying science or whatever, all that stuff. And then just like from day one, he goes out to Gotham and just starts beating the crap out of everyone. And he does everything perfectly. And you as the audience, you'd be like, yo, well, I mean, I guess it doesn't make sense. He didn't earn it. Why can no one touch him? If, there needs to be, like I said, build up character development, all that. And they took that completely away, right? As a matter of fact, even in the prison scene before she escapes, I think she even told Lobo off. Didn't she like say, like, I mean, again, isn't it supposed to be a god? Isn't it supposed to be like a scared little girl? How is it that all of a sudden she's got, balls or whatever? Okay. That honestly to me, I don't say ruined the whole movie, but that's like, that to me was a big, you know, red flag or whatever. Okay, whatever. We'll move on from that. So I guess towards the end of the movie, Supergirl gets hit with a kryptonite arrow or whatever. And then she went up to the sun and they showed like the kryptonite kind of dissolve from her blood when she was in the yellow sun. So I'm just like, okay, so does that mean that the yellow sun destroys kryptonite now? Like, because I don't think that's how it was in the comics. Because then, I mean, in the future, anytime in the future in a movie, if they take out kryptonite for Superman, as long as he's with, like, as long as it's daytime, then there shouldn't be a problem at all, right? I feel like they're writing themselves in the corner, but I don't think they really care about keeping canon or anything like that, consistency. But I'm just kind of threw, like I said, these are just things that I just kind of took me out of the moment. So I think one of the other things towards the end was that I guess Supergirl killed the Ravager or Crumb the Dilator, whatever her fucking name is, right? And in the comic book, she doesn't kill him, right? I think she takes him to the Phantom Zone for 300 years or something like that, which might even be worse. But in this one, he kills him. She kills him. I don't have a problem with that. I can feel or I can see how somebody might have a problem with it. Kind of like the Henry Cavill Superman, how he kills Zod and everybody hated it. I don't personally have a problem. She killed him. That's fine. I mean, I don't think it, at least in the movie, in the context of the movie, it didn't really feel like anything, right? She killed him. All right, whatever. And then finally, I guess since we're towards the end, she already killed him. The ending, I'm a big fan of the ending. Like, I feel like if there was no ending, even though it kind of had like two endings, which is the opposite of what I just said. But what I meant is like, all right, so the first ending was like, all right, so, we finished our mission or whatever, bye. It's like, oh, well, let's go hang out on it's my birthday. All right, let's go, bye. And then there's like hard cut at the end. I guess, to me, there's not a satisfactory kind of like wrap up. And then even then, the second ending was just like a cameo by Superman. I don't remember his name, Hornsworth or Carnes, whatever his name is. And it's just like, it felt very kind of like the studio directors, or the studio executives forcing them to tack on, a Superman cameo like they did in Shazam, right? Or what did I Shazam? Black Adam, right? It kind of felt like had nothing to do with anything. It was like a standalone thing where they were just kind of talking. And then again, it kind of just like, ended. Crypto, don't eat the chocolate. Black cut out to black, right? So I kind of feel like they should have ended it like the comic. Maybe Supergirl comes back, a week later, but then it turns out that like because of the gravity of the sun, time works differently, and Ruth is like an old lady or something. I feel like that would have been, a better ending, something kind of more closure to see that, she lived her full life and never killed anybody else, or she was innocent. Her innocence had been saved, to her old age or whatever. I don't know. It just felt like the ending that they had was just too quick. So I guess that's everything. I might, if you guys like this, I might do other skits or reviews. Again, it's just notes that I wrote down on like while I was watching the movie. So, overall, I guess I would say recommendation. If you don't care about the comic, you just want to watch like better yet, if you haven't read the comic, you just want to watch like a popcorn summer movie, I'd recommend it. I'd give it like a 6.5 out of 10. Go for it. If you're someone who has read the comic and you have a certain expectation, I might tell you to stay away from the movie. I'd give it maybe like a 4 or 5 out of 10. All right, everybody. See you next time.